Welcome to Intelligent Human Leadership, leading yourself and your team. Do you ever find yourself grappling with a lack of confidence in your team? Or battling the relentless waves of concern and fear? Are the pressures to meet client expectations and the burden of missed opportunities weighing you down? On this podcast, you'll discover the strategies and insights that will reignite your team's morale and help you find the harmony and knowledge you seek to propel your business forward. Here, we explore innovative ways to reignite your creative spirit and achieve greatness, empowering you to lead with intelligence, compassion, and resilience. If you're ready to dive deep into your core of leadership challenges and be guided toward success, here's your host, founder of Steward Your Business, David Carr.
Welcome back to the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. I am grateful for your continued engagement here as we move along through the year. Here we are in August 2024 when I'm recording this episode. Last episode, I talked about the power of play. I had gotten back recently from my vacation, traveling to Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and back to California, which was really fun. Really grateful for that. For those of you that want to catch some of the highlights, feel free to follow along with me on my social media. Just look up David Carr or Steward Your Business. Would love to have you engage there. And today I want to, bring to you guys a topic that I think is really important. As an intelligent human leader, we're always looking to liberate our team. Come from a place of transformation, liberation, empowering them to be their best selves, right? And that isn't always the case, unfortunately. And the problem is we're not by default a liberating leader type. Maybe we want to think that we are, but the reality is we are not that way, because in some ways we may show more support or more challenge. And I'm gonna bring to you a tool today as we talk in this podcast to equip you that you can take and apply that in your daily living, whether it's leading your teams at work or even your family members at home, your children, those in your community. So the problem is, again, as I see it, is that we have this challenge of moving to what I call a liberation way of being and creating a culture or a space of empowerment, a place of opportunity, and we fall into other ways, unhealthier ways of being in the way that we show either support or challenge. And so I'm going to introduce to you today one of the tools that I use with clients and pull that out called the Support Challenge Matrix. And in the Support Challenge Matrix, it breaks down this understanding. And I'll help you apply it, particularly for those of you that are listening. You know that I come from an environmental consulting background, working in the AEC industry. And so I thought I want to give you guys some real world examples of where this has shown up. For me, oftentimes we're dealing with a lot of stressful things, right? Challenges that project managers are facing. There's tight deadlines, there's complex projects, there's team dynamics, you have regulatory agencies, third parties with their perspectives, you've got your client asking a few things, you've got challenges with your teams. And so, we have challenges and we have ways that we can support folks. Again, neither one is better than the other, but I'm going to unpack that today in this episode, understanding how we can use the support challenge matrix that you can move from some of the more negative ways of being, which I call low support or low challenge, into more of a high support and high challenge way of being. And for those of you that are watching this, and maybe this video, you're going to be able to see a highlight of that. If those of you are listening to the podcast, which I so appreciate, and you'll totally get value out of this. But if you're not following me on YouTube and you want to see the video version of this, by all means, check out Steward Your Business. I publish both video and audio for the podcast just to be able to reach as many people as possible. So there's a way that you guys can go in there. And I'm going to share this, but I'll paint the picture for you in this matrix. So Why do we need to think about this? The reality is, we've talked about 5 voices in the past, or ways of being. And so naturally, again, some of you are going to show more challenge and some of you are going to show more support naturally. We don't naturally show both of them because it's not our normal way of being. We tend to go to one end of the spectrum or the other. So we either end up going to typically more of a support or challenge, or in a worst case scenario where you're just completely burned out, you're completely checked out, you're going to actually be in neither, in what I call abdicate. And I'm going to show that in the matrix here of how to look at that. But why I like this tool is it's just a great visual to understand, because you'll know very clearly as I describe this to you, who are the people that show up in ways of high challenge and who are the people that show up in ways of high support. What we want to do is converge those two together to a place of liberation where you need both of those things. So I'm going to share my screen here and I'll describe it for those of you that are listening in. But those of you that are watching, you'll be able to see this highlight here on my screen. And I'm going to just pull that up so you guys can see that fully. There you go. So for those of you listening in, think of a matrix as just a box, right? We have a vertical and a horizontal line. In that horizontal line, we have a direction of low challenge to high challenge. So there's a spectrum here, right? It isn't just on off. It really is this spectrum. And so we look at the horizontal axis, if you will. We have a low challenge, high challenge, right? There's a way of being, and one of you are, as you listen to this, you're going to show up one way or the other. For me, you might have heard me talk about this before as a connector voice. That's typically more support than it is challenge. And this is about knowing yourself to lead yourself, right? On this whole podcast is to know yourself to lead yourself and your team. So I'm going to dig deeper into this, but I want to just kind of set the stage. You have an access, an understanding of a high challenge or a low challenge. And then we're going to split that, right? So we have a horizontal and a vertical line, which is high support and low support. So as you look at this and you envision this, across, if you will, you have a spectrum going east to west, low challenge to high challenge, and north to south or south to north, whichever way you want to look at it, high support and low support, meaning going from the south in the box in the bottom to the north to the top is high support. Where we're trying to go is in this direction. We want to aim you guys moving in the direction of high support, high challenge. You want to do both of those. What's really cool about this idea of this matrix, and it's very simple. You'll see 4 boxes, if you will, where we have in our high support, high challenge. That's what we're ideally looking for. Where we are liberating, we're creating a culture of empowerment. That's where that quadrant that we want to go into. For those of you that have thought about these quadrants or ways of being, that would be the same place of where we're working in the important things. If you're using the Eisenhower square box, if you're familiar with that, you have urgent, important. We're looking for the place where reality is we want to be in this liberation place. We want to be in this place where we're empowering our team and we're providing not just support. A lot of people lean on support. And if you've heard me talk about the 5 voices before, the majority of the population are what I call nurturers. They are very high support. A lot of nurturers you find in healthcare. I work with a physical therapist. There's all different folks in that. They provide high support. It's beautiful. It's very much needed. But sometimes they lack the challenge that's also needed to get the results you truly desire for your team, to provide the opportunities for them to grow, to expand. And so when we look at that, so there's a way of you're providing high support, but low challenge, where you're kind of being protective. Like, I don't know, I don't want this to happen. I want to be careful about this. And so what happens is it can actually backfire on you. It can actually create a culture maybe of entitlement or even mistrust. Entitlement meaning, well, hey, I should be able to have this, I should be able to do this, because you're trying to put all the support. How many of you always provided the support? If those of you had children, for example, and they kind of, in a sense, almost take advantage of that. And it's like it's unhealthy because you need to pair that with challenge. And so when we look at this, we can look at our default leadership style. Where do we show up? If we're in that area of high support, or perhaps we're in the high challenge, this is where we have typically, I call them the pioneer voices. They're very clear, they're on a mission. They can almost bulldoze people. And then unfortunately, that can again backfire them, because in their drive to support and grow people by providing high challenge, you can do it, you can make it, this is what we have to do. They see this. It's very important to them. And it is truly important to the organization, but that can create a culture of fear, perhaps even manipulation, or at least that sense of it from your team, because you're pushing so hard on the challenge and you lack support. So what happens is we need both of those things. The worst case scenario to be in ultimately here is abdicate, where we have literally, we're apathetic. We abdicate. We remove ourselves. We're like, no, we have low expectations. We have low challenge, low support. This is the, quintessential, I don't say quintessential, but the person that is just checking in the box. You've met them in some kind of organization, some kind of big organization or something. Yeah, whatever. I'll get to it whenever I get to it. They're low in support. They're also low in challenge. This is the most unhealthy place where we don't want to be. But how many of you have been around that or worked around people like that? When the organization starts to create this place, you can have real challenge in attracting and maintaining people in your organization. And so what we need to do is find a balance here. And this is hard, because what happens is if you think your way of being is the only and the right way, you're going to find it yourself in a pitfall or a challenge here. That's why I like this matrix, because if you want to pull this out, print it out, message me, you guys, if you want, and I can give you a copy of this little matrix. Because what you could do is literally plot yourself, or have somebody else plot for you. Where would they say you are in the spectrum here? And ideally, make it anonymous so people don't feel like they have to, they don't want to feel threatened. But you could just say, I'm going to put a sheet here or draw it on a board. Where am I in this spectrum, in this matrix? Am I more in the dominant quadrant, where I'm providing high challenge and very low support? Am I in that protect quadrant, where I'm providing a lot of support but not meaningful challenge? Or am I starting to move in that direction of liberate? This was eye-opening for me as a leader, as a project manager, as I had to learn how to start to lean into more challenge. And that's hard. It's hard. It's not my default way of being. So if you understand this about yourself, let's get into some practical tips as a leader, whether you be a project manager, you're leading a team here, how you can manage these high stress projects, maybe mentor junior team members, cross-functional teams, right? We've got different disciplines. For those of you in the environmental consulting world, I did cultural resources, paleontology, biology, environmental planning. There's a lot. And people are driven different ways. And so when we understand this, we can then better show up and improve our adaptability with our team, particularly for evolving demands on complex projects. So if you have a client, let's just say, I've had many like this, where they're in the dominant, where they're like just demanding, hey, I need this. They're really showing high challenge. These are the things I need to have done. Here's what has to happen. And they're not showing support. What you need to do as a leader, number one, is model for your team how we can work with that particular client. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to be able to change the client. They may continue to come from a place of that high challenge and low support. But how are you going to show up? How will you respond? Will you respond, where you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to pull back and I won't provide the support because I'm going to abdicate possibly because you're being so pressed? Or do you say, you know what? I see where they're coming from. How can I support my team better and address this particular client and what they're asking for? How can I ask them or get them to provide me the support. Sometimes it's a little finagling. I'll give you that. It's navigating. It's developing the relationship. Again, it's helping you be that intelligent human leader. And so it's understanding, number one, where are they coming from? What's driving them? Are they a high challenge or are they high support? And then you'll recognize, okay, somebody that's coming from that place, where can we help them? We can say to them, look, I know you need to get this done. I see why this is important to you. Absolutely. Why we need to get this report done in a certain way, right? Let's just use this as an example. Oftentimes we're getting a report done. In fact, I just had a client meeting today. We're trying to get this done. There's some logistics to be had there. We could have just been really kind of bullying and pushing and say, no, this is what we need to be. This is how it needs to be. Instead, what we did was, in this case, we were working with a regulatory agency, and we listened to them. We said, let's have a meeting. Let's hear from them. They actually were able to provide support, and we were able to leverage that rather than, and then having a client that's pushing for things, listening from each other and drawing in each other's strengths. Again, that's a place of creating culture of empowerment and opportunity. So in the reality, at the end of the meeting, we had a shared vision. We had a way of a plan going forward. But if we were just high challenge and we're just pushing each other and not having the support, it would be much more painful. And on the same token, if we were just like, oh, we support you, but not giving you the challenge, in this particular regulatory agency, they had challenge. They had some specific comments, things that needed to be addressed, they were concerned about, but we came together. And so you have to understand, when do we come together? How do we collaborate here effectively? So using the support challenge matrix is going to help you evaluate your team and how you guys are collaborating or not, right? And draw out each other's strengths from each other. We don't need to be overly combative, and we also don't need to be overly resistant or protective either. We can let our guard down. So typically, if you're the guardian or nurturer voice, let's just say, you're much more likely to provide, particularly nurturers are going to provide much more support, where guardians actually might provide more challenge. It's understanding your voice dynamics here. Creatives, for example, they're very open to trying new things and whatnot, and they will probably provide sometimes a little bit of not the challenge that they need to help them refine their ideas, to get clear on, hey, where are we actually going here? Same thing with connectors. And so this is like, brake and gas, right? Yeah. If I drive down, I live in the mountains sometimes. And so there's this place of braking, right? Which I would consider, in some regards, maybe providing a form of challenge or resistance, right? Or gas, you're providing support, like, hey, let's move this along some more, supporting them. It's a constant evaluation of where do we need more, where do we need less, right? So that we can move into this place of liberation. And what will happen is, again, if you're not evaluating yourself, and this is a shared language, this is what I like about using these tools. This is one of the tools I've pulled, being a Giant certified guide, is that when you start to use this language, you could say, okay, am I showing up in a place of kind of domination and really just providing challenge, and where my team is being resistant? But again, you have to know your voice of your team, the makeup of your team too. That's when I go through and I do a team assessment. I can help you evaluate, what is the makeup of this team? Where are people going to naturally show up to? And for those of you that are interested, I have a whole 5 Voices workshop that I will lead you and your teams through, to where really is empowering and life-changing and transformational in how you're showing up. Ultimately being that liberated leader, being that most intelligent leader. Where I've seen struggles, and particularly in today's age, where we have such a diverse dynamics in age, our ages in the workplace, right? Our different generations, what motivates them. Some are motivated more by the support, some are motivated more by the challenge, but the reality is we need both of those things together. And if you're The old school way of that I saw was a lot of domination, high challenge. We want this to happen. We want this to happen. Make it happen. You're like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. Get it done somehow, and so it was just exasperating and energetically you were just, people felt they were not meeting the goals that that the leader was having. Whether you be the project manager, supervisor, like, just get it done. You can do it. I believe it. This is what needs to begin. And there's nothing wrong with high challenge. It just needs to become with support. And one of the things I've found that you can use this tool is oftentimes we need to lead with support and then bring the challenge in behind it. If you're putting challenge on somebody and the support comes later, it's just really hard in my experience to get the results, to get the effective engagement and productivity out of your team. When you come and start with support first and you say, hey, we're fueling you up, if you will, we're getting you prepared, we're providing that, but you've got to come in with the challenge as well, because if you only fuel them up and you're like, hey, you're great, we appreciate you, you're wonderful, this is all great, what happens again, we can create a culture of entitlement. That's what I've seen, the worst case scenario, where it's like, well, no, we got to bring in the challenge too. So when do we bring that in? How do we feather that in, if you will, right? Well, that's where coaching, consulting comes in, because I wouldn't expect anyone to just be able to do this off the bat. I've been in the AEC industry for over 20 plus years, working as a project manager, working as a biologist, working with different teams. It's very nuanced. But as you listen to the podcast today and you hear this, I want you to know that you have an advocate in me, and you have a place here in the Steward Your Business, Steward Yourself program where you can go through and not be alone and not feel like, man, I'm going to make a mistake, or how am I going to do this? We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to have challenges. We're going to tend to fall into one area or the other. Again, like I started at the beginning of this podcast, the problem is we don't all come from a place of liberation. It's just not our natural default way of being. I don't care who you are. And if you think you're that way, I would challenge you to consider that you might be showing up one way more than the other. Maybe more support or more challenge. Oftentimes, we're right in our own mind until we get feedback that tells us otherwise. So I'm giving you feedback here and an observation as one that has worked in the industry here for many years and have seen different ways of doing this. Honestly, I've seen it in the accounting side where they're much more protective. They're looking and they're trying to make sure everything is all taken care of. And so they're trying to, how do we support people? And then you've got some other leaders, potentially the CEO, the director. Hey, we got to get these sales goals. We got to get these things done. Got our safety record has to be down. And so they're very much high challenge. And they're like, well, how are we going to do this? And the team's feeling disengaged or disconnected. And so we won't want you to be losing people. We don't want you to be losing productivity. In this ever competitive world we have with people, right? Hiring the right people, bringing them in. You don't want to lose people. I've seen teams wiped out by high challenge, low support. On the same token, I've seen organizations become more toxic in that they're always supportive and there's not a real high challenge there of like, hey, this is what needs to have happen. And so people take advantage of the situation. They abuse the system because they feel like, oh, I've got the support there. So if any of these are resonating with you, as you hear me share, these challenges of high support, low challenge, or high challenge, low support, the reality is that you can be healthier. You can be healthier in the way that you're leading yourself and your teams by being an honest assessment of where you fall on the spectrum. Where do you fall on the support challenge matrix? Are you moving into the place of liberation? Are you stuck in a place of domination or protection? And I hope, for those of you that are listening, I don't think any of you guys are going to fall into abdication, but you certainly probably are running into people that are abdicating, people that are stepping back. So how do we empower them? How do we support them and challenge them to rise up, to be more engaged, more supportive, more productive, more effective in the way that they show up in your organization and working with your teams? I appreciate you guys listening as always here on the podcast. If this has resonated with you and you've felt like, hey, David, you've left me some food for thought here. I know that I can evaluate myself in a new way that I hadn't looked at before. I can look and see how am I showing up in high support or high challenge, and how can I be a person of liberation, bringing true transformation of yourself and your teams. I would encourage you, please leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Like or subscribe if you guys follow along and watching me on YouTube. And you can connect with me. Of course, I would love to hear from you. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all those good things. You guys can find me, David Carr, David W. Carr, Steward Your Business. So together, we can create a community of empowerment. Together, we can create a place of culture, of opportunity, and supporting one another so that you're not alone, that you have others that are going along with you and going further together. I appreciate you guys continuing to follow along the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. And I appreciate your feedback, your comments. It's really helpful and valuable to me. And of course, sharing with others that they could be a part of this experience. So until next time, take good care. Continue to move toward liberation, becoming that most intelligent human leader. Appreciate you guys listening once again. Until next time, take care, everybody.